Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Parent Cafe podcast. My name is Allie,
And I'm Sarah.
and we are joined today by Ginette. Welcome back.
We're
Thank
so
you for
happy to
having
have
me
you.
again.
Yay.
So
Excited to
that
be
you're
here.
Yeah, we're excited. There's
Yes.
something strange happening today, but Jeanette's going to explain all about it and kind of just let everybody in on what's happening. I'm going to be emotion coded.
I'm so excited to see and hear and feel what is going on today. It's definitely a different podcast that we're doing today. So I can't wait.
It's different for me. I work distantly with people all the time. Distance meaning that they're not physically in front of me because we are all in our home or workplaces right now. But I've never been recorded doing it. So that's really different for me as well. So we're not going to do a full session because sessions are about 45 minutes. And I think that might get a little boring to watch. Plus, I don't want to delve too much into Allie's personal life in front of everyone. That being said, I'm not a counselor, so it doesn't get don't delve into stuff, but sometimes certain emotions do trigger things for people, and sometimes people get emotional, and I don't know how comfortable that would be for someone being recorded.
Honestly, I'm very emotional all the time, I think. I'm like a pretty high emotion person. So I'm good. I public cry all the time.
I'm the complete opposite. So
and the way I see things with what I do, when we're more emotional, as long as it's within an emotional level that we're comfortable and happy with, it's a healthy thing.
Yeah.
Because the more we're able to share and show our emotions, the less like we are to trap and hold on to them. And when we trap and hold on to our emotions, that's when we build up. And then there's that higher need to release them, because when they build up, that's when they can create imbalances and cause issues for people like stomach aches or headaches or heightened anxiety, depression, those sort of things. But when we allow ourselves to feel and work through our emotions, we're less likely to trap them.
Yeah.
So
I'm 50-50 there, I think. I'm like, there are certain things I release instantly, and then there are certain things that I'm just like, okay, maybe later.
Yep.
Like, deal with it later.
There is truth to that for, I think, everyone. I mean, there's a time and a place. The grocery store is not always the best place to have a meltdown, right? You gotta.
Well, if you're 2 years old,
if you're 2,
you're fine.
The best.
But at 29, it doesn't seem okay anymore. So.
True. Yeah. As adults, I think we all sort of, sometimes we have to stuff just to get through things as adults.
Yeah.
Can't be crying at work every day.
See, that's definitely a place I think over time, if I had like stressful things happening at work, I do remember times I have like cried, like either just like privately to like my manager or just like in my office by myself or wherever I have to go, like a changing room, whatever, wherever I've worked. Like this is a bit of a story, but a kid pooped in a pool once. And I had cellulitis on my ankle. And I'd gone to work because we were short staffed and I didn't want to stay home. I just didn't feel like it was like a stay home thing, but I didn't know enough about it. So I had an infection on my like ankle. My ankle was so swollen, and all of the like part-time guards didn't want to go in because the 2-year-old that made an accident in the pool went into the change room with mom. Mom lost track of them and they came back and went into the pool alone. Like they ran out. It was like a little warm waiting pool.
Yeah.
And there were like 3 guards that were at the time like 16, 17. And they were like, I'm not going in there. There's poo. Like, I'm not going in. And I just like looked at them, and just being like the supervisor at the time, I was like, okay, I guess I'm going in with my infection. And so I was like, I went in, grabbed the kid, and everything was fine. I just did it. And then I like hobbled off to like the adult change room that like you need a passcode for. And I went in there and I stood in the hot shower just crying. I was just like, because it was like devastating. I'm like, no one wanted to help me. Like,
and help the child too.
Yeah. And like, where's mom? And I was just like so overwhelmed. But yeah, like I've had those moments where I'm just like, okay, crying in public now.
Yep.
What do you do? Like, I don't know.
And I think that's being able to cry is huge. I talk to so many people that are like, I can't cry. I don't cry.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that fine line between wanting to
Me
feel
there.
emotions and not wanting to feel emotions.
Yeah.
So what was that, Sarah?
I said that's me for sure. But I feel like after I had a child, I definitely cry a lot more
Yeah.
than I definitely did before. So,
Because your heart walks beside you now.
Yeah.
oh, that's so nice.
That is
Should
sweet.
write that
well,
down.
Well
My
written.
mom says to me.
Aw, the
That
nice
could go on a
quote.
card.
I know.
She said that to me yesterday. She's like, when I had you, I realized my heart walks beside me now. I was like,
Aw.
Aw.
see, that's why I cry so much. Look at my mother. Like,
Yeah.
sappy, just family
So
of saps.
Aw. It's so sweet.
Yeah. A lot of that stuff does come down the line. I come from an emotional family too, and
Mhm.
I get it.
Yeah.
So Allie, should we try a little mini session?
Yeah, let's jump in.
All right.
I don't know what to expect.
So when I say mini session, again, they're usually about 45 minutes, but I'm not going to keep track of the time, but probably I'm going to guess about 5, maybe 10 minutes. And in a normal session, I usually release, I don't know, roughly guesstimating 20-ish plus emotions, and we'll probably only release 4 or 5. Just for the
10
sake
minutes?
of, and it depends. It really varies how it goes. So
That seems like a lot.
we'll see. We're just going to
Okay.
kind of play it by ear because honestly, everyone's different, and it depends what comes up and stuff. So there's no set rule with anyone because again, every individual is different, and it depends on the emotions that come up, if they trigger things for you or not. It also depends on if the emotions come up. Some are straightforward emotions, where some are emotions that we don't have in our regular vocabulary of saying, I feel this, I feel that. We tend to stick to like maybe half a dozen emotions: happy, sad, mad,
Okay.
those kind of things. And these kind of are the emotions behind a lot of those that we don't often go, oh, I feel this today.
Okay.
So, all right.
Nervous.
Fair enough. You wouldn't be the first. I often have people that come into the clinic and they're saying they're nervous as well, or over the phone. And by the end, everyone's like, "Oh, that was really nice. That was really relaxing." And that's what I hear the most is, "Oh, that was relaxing, and I feel really good." It's the whole experience physically in the clinic is similar, relaxation-wise, to a massage.
Okay.
In that you get to lie down and relax on a massage table at the clinic. It's different in that you do stay fully clothed, so it's different in that sense from a massage. And then over the phone, what people like is they can be on their couch, they can be in their bed, they can have their cup of tea, their favorite blanket, their heat pack, whatever. And so it's meant to be a very relaxing process. But yes, being recorded doing it adds a little bit of nervousness, I understand.
I have a blanket on, so hopefully I'm counteracting the recording.
Well, hopefully by the end, even with the nerves of being recorded for it, you'll be in a more relaxed place.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
All right.
Yep.
So to start, Allie, what I'm going to get you to do is close your eyes. And together we're going to take 3 really slow, deep breaths together, breathing in through our nose and out through our mouth. Okay. So deep breath in and out. And again, in and out. And last one, in and out. Perfect. All right. So just to explain, those nice 3 deep breaths are for both of us. It gives you a chance to kind of relax and settle in. And during that, I'm also relaxing down my energy and energetically connecting with you. So again, even though we're not in the same place, we are energetically connected. So prior to this, Ellie gave me legal consent through intake forms, but that was kind of our moment to energetically connect and get energetic consent to work with your higher self and your subconscious. So what you guys can see here if you're watching, is that I'm muscle testing. So emotion code, that is one of the biggest parts of it, is muscle testing. So this is my strong or my yes, and this is my weaker or my no. So what you can't see is off to the side, I have got a chart of emotions, and I'm just going to muscle test to see which emotion we need to release for Ali today as a priority. Okay. So with that muscle testing, I'm getting the emotion and as well as the age. So the first emotion coming up as a priority for you today is the emotion of overwhelm. And this one is from age 25. So not too long ago.
Mm-hmm.
So with any emotion that comes up, a lot can happen in a year. So sometimes right away we're like, oh, I know what that was. And sometimes we don't.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no wrong or right either way, because we don't always connect our emotions to memories. And the memory itself isn't what the important part is. It's about releasing the energy of the emotion. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right. You're smirking. I feel like you know what it is connected to.
That wasn't that long ago.
True.
I was overwhelmed a lot, like 24, 25.
Yeah.
I had just moved to Edson, and then I had started a new job. And then my job was like covering a mat leave and doing like a new program. So there was just a lot going on. And then my relationship ended. And then I moved, I bought a house. So it was like all within 1 year.
That's a lot in 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So what we're going to do now is release the energy of that emotion. So for that, what you guys will see is I'm releasing over my head. Because we're energetically connected. If Ali was in the clinic, I would be releasing over her head or down her back. The same energy releases regardless of whether she's in front of me or distant as well. All right, so we can release that now. And deep breath. And then the next emotion we see is the emotion of unworthy from the age of 28.
Aw.
It's a big emotion. And I will let you know, I'm going to cry with you. That's what I do sometimes. Unworthy is a big emotion, but it's a very common emotion. It's about the struggle of not feeling good enough, which it's sad that as humans, we so often feel that. Makes sense? Yeah. I'm going to breathe for you. Okay. You ready to release that from your body and mind and soul? All right, so we're going to release that. And deep breath. Perfect. Let's release.
I'm glad I'm not wearing any makeup.
Okay. So what you guys can't see as well as I'm writing down. I usually type them up, but just with being recorded, I couldn't figure out placement of everything. But I do in any session record and write down everything that's being released, and then I email that to the client afterwards. The reason I do that is for keeping track, and as well sometimes when in a session it can get almost overwhelming to feel like you need to keep track of what's being released. And some people like to look back and see, and some people don't, and everyone's different with that. But I do send that information either way.
That's cool.
So what's showing up next as a priority to be released today, Ali, is the emotion of guilt from age 26.
26. Wow, my God, my 20s are so busy.
We'll see. You never, and some younger stuff might come up, it might not. So guilt, I explain, is often a tricky one because guilt does, I mean, all of our emotions serve a purpose, but guilt serves a purpose in the sense that sometimes it's letting us know, okay, maybe there's something we need to do. Maybe we need to talk to someone. Maybe we need to apologize, fix something. But the important part is once guilt is there to send that message, it's important to then let it go. And so often we really hold on to our guilt. Knowing that this podcast is mostly, for moms as well, Parent Cafe, mom guilt is huge. We're really hard on ourselves. So that can be a common one that shows up as well. All right, so we'll let go of that. And deep breath. Perfect. It's released. Okay, and then we've got lack of control from age 8. So with younger ones, it can be even harder to figure out what it is, depending on, sometimes it's a really big year and right away. But what traps our emotion is our perception. So your perception when you were 8 is going to be very different than your perception now. Working or being around kids, that kids can very easily sort of take things the wrong way or take things to heart. And that's how we trap things, is how we're perceiving it. And that's where the event itself isn't as important as how we're perceiving it, how it's making us feel, and how we're holding on to it.
Lack of control makes sense for age 8.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Oh.
We moved.
I want to say I'm sorry for this being
No.
you don't know what's going to pull up till it's
No,
happening.
It's fine. Yeah, we moved from BC, and it was like my first best friend.
Oh.
And we left, and I was 8, and I remember sitting in like the back of the car and like looking out the back window for hours, just like driving away after saying bye. So
you didn't want to go.
No, we were moving from BC to Ontario.
Oh, that's a huge move. Yeah.
So yeah, and there was a lot going on. Like my brother was 1, so just a lot of emotion that year too. So
Yeah.
That
makes sense.
Oh, that's crazy.
So with big emotions, like from childhood, I hear people say, well, I thought I dealt with that, or they're surprised that stuff comes up sometimes, or they know, but they're still surprised. And that can be just that our body holds on to stuff.
And it's weird because I have talked about this like several times. Like this isn't a memory that like I can't talk about. So like to cry with it is like new. So
yeah. So when with if we were to do a full session, there's likely more stuff that we could release connected to that time.
Yeah.
just because with a big year, there's usually more than one. There might not be, but I would be surprised in a full session if there weren't.
Mhm.
But to start, we'll release this lack of control. Do that. And deep breath. All right, how are you feeling?
Good.
Good. Do you feel like we should release some more, or call it call it a day for our mini session?
I think that's good.
Okay.
I'm curious now, but
Yeah. How is there anything you notice, and everyone again is different for this, anything you notice in your body with releasing those?
I'm noticing the emotional come down is like very fast. Like I'm like it like was really high very quickly and then just like really low really quickly. Like it's not to say gone, but like gone in the moment, like instantly.
Yeah.
So now I could probably talk more about that incident, and like I'm not wanting to wail.
Yeah.
But like I've never ever expressed like that much like sadness around that time, because I've talked about that like time of my life so many times, because it's just a big memory for me.
Yeah.
But I've never attached anything like so emotional to it, I think.
Yeah, because it just was what it was.
Yeah, I had no control.
Yeah.
I couldn't do anything about it, because it was just my parents.
Yeah.
We were moving, and that was that. Like, we're just going.
Yeah. Well, and that's something, I mean, life does happen, and we can never shelter our kids from hurt.
Yeah.
And something we hear so much now is, oh, kids are resilient. And it's like, yeah, they are. But if you talk to someone who works with adults through stuff from their childhood, it's like, yeah, they're resilient, but.
Yeah.
And that's where it's so important to work through letting go of stuff, either as a child or as an adult, because we hold on to stuff, and it you never know how it can impact us. So
Do you find, like, when you work with children and you bring that, like, would it be similar, like, to bring something up and tell them, like, age this was this emotion, and then if they're able to recall what happened, like, does it look the same as an adult? Does it? Or similar? Like, is it?
It's a yes and no, I think, to that one, because a lot of kids, they just don't seem to attach the emotion to the event the same. So they can talk, sometimes kids will share events and discuss some stuff, but it's just like they're telling the story. More often than not, it seems, with kids. And often every kid's so different, but I do get a lot, this emotion, this age, and I'll ask a kid anything you can remember, and they're like, I don't know. That's what I get the most, where mom might be or dad might be in the corner going, oh, I know. And that's where, as adults, we just tend to make that connection more of the emotion to the memory, where kids are memories, emotions are emotions. They tend to not connect, but at the same time, I have had some where they connect it more, and they maybe don't get as physically emotional, but you can see the emotion in their eyes, and you can see almost a sense of release and relief when you've released it. Like, you can almost, I've had some situations where a kid just comes in and they just, I don't know if any of you have ever seen a kid where they just look sad. Like, you just are like, oh, it breaks your heart just seeing them, and they just look like they have the weight of the world on their young little shoulders. And you can actually even see sometimes where their posture changes, and they're holding their head up high by the end of the session. And I've had many mom go like, oh, their smile is back. Their sparkle is back. So
I know.
Which,
Sarah, I
yeah.
saw you tear up there.
When I see other people cry, I have to cry too. And I just like, it was such like strong emotion coming out. Like, so
Yeah.
I just like couldn't not. It was hard. Like it was even, I don't want to say it was hard watching, but it was just like, wow, like I was amazed of just how like I fast, and like it was just amazing, honestly. Like you said, Ginette, before we started, like that I wouldn't really see anything, but like I could see like your guys' connection too. Like even you were like, I'm gonna breathe for you, and like I could like see like Allie like take that breath at that time. Like it was just like that connection was really there, and it was so
That's
cool to
super
watch.
cool.
Yeah, like it was just like just a
Nice.
little comment she made, like I'm gonna breathe for you, like when you were crying, and it's just like, and then you were like released. Like it was just amazing.
I felt
Yeah.
that when you said you'd breathe for me, my crying like wanted to stop. Like it was like, okay,
Yeah.
Well,
it was
we
like you can breathe now.
We stop breathing when we cry quite often.
Yeah.
So
I know.
So, and you know, I will say too, yes, not everyone cries, and there's no right or wrong to that in a session. Some people do, some people don't. I prefer to be honest with people, and you know, if you think you're gonna have stuff come up that is gonna make you emotional, maybe don't book my 8:00 a.m. appointment when you got to work at 9. Maybe book an evening one. So everyone is so different with that. And, you know, working in a small town, some people aren't comfortable having their emotions bubble over in, you know, yes, we're in a private room, but, you know, most people are familiar with the clinic and leaving. And I've snuck people out the back door because they don't want to go out the front door when they're all red-eyed and puffy. And it's all okay, and it's okay not to cry. And some people, I can see them actively trying not to cry, and then maybe they have that big cry later in their car, and there's no wrong or right to any of that.
There was a moment there where I really didn't want to cry. I like in my mind I was like, I want to talk about it, I don't want to cry. But then the cry was just like, no girl, like we're gonna cry about this. But it just, I have never cried about that. Like that age 8 one really got me, and then age 28 actually was like shocking to me, because that's like I don't know. So I have a question, and I'm trying not to cry now, but if you know, you name an age, you name an emotion, but then is it up to the individual? Like, can you go deeper and pinpoint like a time throughout that year, or is it really up to what I'm feeling?
It's not exact, so I've never pinpointed to an exact month or anything, because again, it's not the event itself, it's the memory. So if something comes to mind, that's likely what it is. But it isn't even necessary to know what it is.
Because
to release it.
Two things came to mind, but they were both at opposite ends of year 28.
Yeah.
So just to feel like, okay, there's 2 times that were like honestly 12 months apart almost to the date. So it's like, and that same emotion, unworthy.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard to say because emotions are connected. So if it's, oops, sorry, my headphone fell out there. If it's 2 different times, that second time can be attached to the first if the emotions are that strongly connected, because it triggers it. So if you felt unworthy in both, the second time is triggering the first as well. And it's almost like you could be feeling some of the same emotions and triggering that same memory. And that's where releasing layers from childhood and from the whole, you know, from our lives is important moving forward, because then when we're dealing with an emotion, we're dealing with that emotion instead of that emotion plus all the triggers from our past that it's triggering. And it makes it easier and more comfortable to feel what we're feeling when it's not triggering all this other stuff.
Okay. And when you're going through are you going through emotion by emotion, or is it by the life, like your year?
I was literally just going to ask the same thing.
It's not by year. No, it's today was simply what's the priority. So we did 25, 28, 26, 8. So it's not in any chronological order.
Mm-hmm.
And our subconscious, which is what emotion code works with, our subconscious is brilliant in that it knows what needs to go when. And it will never bring up an emotion that you're not ready or capable to let go of.
That's scary.
So it's good. If you're
Is
not
there
ready
more?
I just got goosebumps.
I know. If you're not ready to let go of something, so let's say someone went through some very serious trauma or abuse or something like that, they might not be ready to have that stuff come up. And if they're not ready, it's not going to come up.
Oh, wow.
Because our subconscious knows you're not ready for this to be released. And, you know, I've had people be like, oh, I thought this and this would come up. And it's like, well, maybe it will next time, or maybe the time after that, because everything comes up when it's ready to come up. And we might not understand in the moment what comes up when, but it's kind of that whole, it will when it's ready.
That's really interesting.
Yes.
That being said, you know, if someone wanted to, it's like, oh, if I've, you know, someone might be like, okay, I went through this experience at this age. Can we work specifically on that? Yes, we most certainly can.
Okay.
So it can be specific to a time in someone's life if that's what they're wanting.
And then are they naming the emotion, or do you go through and find them with them?
It's all, emotion code is all naming the emotion.
Okay.
Yeah. So because I'm not a counselor, it's not about you naming it and us discussing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's about finding the emotion and then releasing it.
That's kind of what I was wondering, because I guess like a person could go in saying like, oh, when I was 12, this happened and it makes me feel like this emotion. But then how do you go from there? Because I guess like they could be perceiving it as, you know, anger, let's say, but then the emotions are different, like tied into different emotions, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's where it's about the layers. Anger is a great example, because how often do we kind of settle down from being angry and realize, oh, maybe I wasn't as angry as I was sad, or I was disappointed, or whatever it might be, or your anger gets directed here, but you're really actually hurt about what happened over here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where our subconscious works through those layers. And so people will come in, it really depends. Like if someone really wants me to work on a certain time, but there's often so much more around things. And that's where sometimes we'll get into layers and stuff as well. I'm really struggling with my headphones. Sorry, guys.
It's okay. I can hear you fine every time you drop them. So.
Yeah.
It's the hard part of talking with my hands.
Yeah. That's why we have over the head ones.
You guys are smart.
Oh, I still get like stuck in this like in between thing. I'm like constantly pulling on this little like
that's exactly what I pulled on.
I'm like choking myself. But so when you think about like ages that doing this with children or doing this with parents, I'm seeing like a real benefit, honestly, and I feel relieved right now. Like I feel relief. Like I feel just like almost like cleansed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just that kind of
thing. And it's hard to describe, isn't it? It's hard to find the words.
It's a weird feeling. Like I feel relieved, and I didn't even think I needed to be relieved of anything.
Yes.
You know, it's just kind of like
you did come in saying like how happy and like everything's so good.
Yeah. Right, because I have no, you know, like I'm pregnant, but like everyone knows now anyway by the time this is out. So it's like the beauty of pre-recording. So it's just like everything's good. And I honestly didn't have like thoughts of like, oh, I wonder like what emotion is really going to come up, because I just didn't think there was anything. And I guess I'm thinking very like present tense too.
Yes.
And so I'm thinking like, oh, is she going to catch on that like I had a rough morning, or like, you know, secrets out. But yeah, like that's kind of where I almost kind of came into it with that. And then to have like the ages and then be able to like, oh yeah, geez, I know exactly what that emotion is from.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have honestly like pretty vivid memories for, I want to say probably starting at like 5. So I could probably go back pretty far, but my life changed a lot. Like like we moved when I was 4 from Poland, and then we were in a new
Wow.
place like without language. And so like I'm sure there's so much more. Like I'm scared to know.
I understand you saying scared, but like you said, you didn't,
No.
you feel relieved, and we just released 4 things.
Yeah.
And you didn't know, and that's the thing, I'm glad
I
you
didn't
mentioned that.
expect them.
We don't know what we're carrying or the weight of what we're carrying until we've let it go.
Yeah.
And I've heard so many people say, well, I didn't experience anything that bad. I didn't go through, people think they need to have a horrible life for this to be something that can benefit them.
Right.
And that's not the case. Anyone can really benefit from it, because no one lives a perfectly smooth life.
No. And like my super low could be someone else's high. So, and then vice versa, right? Like I know that too. Like I'm very aware, but I guess that's part of the problem. Like you're self-aware that it's like, I know that my problems aren't as big as other people's problems, but in like my life, my problems are huge. Like to me, right?
Yes.
But they might, to someone else, they're like, okay, whatever. Like you just wailed about like moving when you were 8, whoop-de-doo, but it was just like, it was huge. Like that was a huge thing in my life that like probably changed me a lot. Like it was a huge thing.
And you shouldn't, there's a lot of, with COVID and everything, everyone's like, oh, be grateful for where you are. And yes, that's important. But what you went through was big. So don't discredit it.
Yeah. I think everyone has that problem though. Everyone kind of discredits what they go through, because you were almost like taught to be that way. Like it's like, think about other people and consider someone else might be going through something bigger than you. And that's almost what we use to like bury the emotions we have, where we're like, someone else is going through something far worse, so I need to like buckle down and get through it. And we do that all the time. And I think like even moms do that all the time, where it's like they're exhausted, their world is ending. Like it's like, I can't anymore. But then they have like another mom that maybe has it a little worse for her. So then you as a mom will be like, okay, it's not so bad. It's not as bad as theirs. I can get through this. We'll be fine. And then it's bottled. I honestly feel like this would probably be so helpful with like postpartum. Like, like that's like the feeling I'm getting.
Yeah. I had a lot of parents say like that, oh, like my problems are bad, but I know someone's is worse. And I like, it's hard to justify like for themselves as a mom. It's like, I know someone's is worse. It's like, I can tell like yours is just as valid. Like you're going through this. Yeah. Like, so something like this, I wish you could just come in and just do like a whole group session.
Oh my
God.
For
hours.
Honestly, I could see this though. I would do this in like with like a group of friends or family. If that was like, I honestly feel like this would be so healing for people. Like
when people have like psychics come to like a group reading.
Group reading.
Have emotion code reading.
Emotion code group.
I've never worked with a group. It is quite common where, for example, recently I worked with a young boy in a family, and the parents saw such wonderful results in him that they're like, okay, now I want to try. I want to try.
My turn.
And because they just saw, they're like, wow, night and day. And now they see a difference in themselves as well. And as spouses, they see differences in each other and how they're able to manage their stress and manage those difficult parenting moments. So it never worked in a group, but it can be in a group, but separate. Not
everyone
uncommon.
In the group coming in on their own.
Yes.
I get that. No, I do.
And I kind of giggled to myself when you said psychic, Sarah, because I say a emotion and an age and it triggers. I have had people go, "Oh, are you psychic?" And I'm like, "No, it's not at all that. It's your subconscious is communicating what needs to go."
The way you describe emotion code and like this practice, it's energy. So it's through the body, and then it's through energy. But is there any part of it that people often or sometimes think like it metaphysical almost? Like it's like psychic sort of like into that energy world, I guess. Do
Yeah.
people take
Well,
it there?
it is definitely, it's energy work. It's moving
Right.
the energy of the emotion. So I guess some people would describe that as metaphysical. I think it really depends on people's outlooks. Like,
Yeah, because I know when we talked last time, we did kind of chat about like people having that misconception where they're like, oh, well, I don't know if I would go in if it would do anything for me because I'm not sure that I believe. And
yeah,
that was
Yeah.
kind of the attitude I had when I tried bars, like I had told you before. And then I had all these weird memories and I was like, this is so strange. I didn't expect to like feel anything. And I
Yeah.
honestly, today, I like coached myself this morning and I was like, you're not a skeptic. You are like, you have emotion. There's something in there. We're going to let Ginette have it. Like, I was just coaching myself this morning. I'm just like, so that's why. So 10 minutes before we came on, I was telling Sarah, and then I mentioned it. I thought Ginette had already like tapped into me
Yes.
because I was already crying today and like getting emotional. And I was like,
yeah.
hello, can you hear me?
Jenna.
Like, yeah.
And no, I did not tap in advance.
I wouldn't have been mad about it because it honestly made me like, okay, Allie, like chill for a minute. Like have a drink of water. Like, what are you doing? But I am an emotional
Well, and I think
person.
sometimes the word emotion in emotion code will sometimes get people emotional in advance because they either know more than likely it's going to make me emotional, or for some people the word emotion goes, oh, well, I don't want to deal with my emotions. So I kind of get all ends of that spectrum.
Yeah.
But skeptical, I do see a lot of that, and I get it. I was when I first took my son in. So
Oh yeah.
and I was when I first had my first session on myself. So I get it.
And that's where it changed for you, is when you saw the changes in your son.
Yeah.
So were you present during those, or did you just kind of see changes with him after?
He was only 2, and we
Okay.
physically went for a session. I know it's quite common. I hear it a lot, and I was the same, so I get it. The thought of something working over the phone was like impossible in my brain. It was like, there's no way.
Yeah.
This worked.
I believe it now.
I've seen it to believe it.
But people do sometimes when I wanted to see it in person, and it was only in Edmonton, which is, yes, sometimes it's a pain in the butt to drive all the way to Edmonton, but it was feasible. So I took my son in, I sat in the session with him. He played with toys and colored, and he was there, but he wasn't part of it. He was only 2.
Right.
So it wasn't like there was no way of like, oh, I remember feeling that. He's like doing his own thing. And so even when I walked out, I was skeptical because I was like, I don't really understand what just happened.
Mm-hmm.
I totally didn't understand what just happened. But then it was the fact that he started not having night terrors for a chunk of time after that I went, I don't get it. But he was like this, and then he was like this. It was night and day, the difference.
Right.
So
I know a lot of people would think like you have to go in for like a certain reason, but like if I was just to be like, hey, can I come in? I don't know what I'm working on. Like, does that work as well for people? Yeah.
There is no need for a
or
reason.
like for my child or something. Like, I don't really have an issue that I don't think we need to work on, but
yeah, it's just like you don't need to be in massive pain to get a massage, to get the benefits of a massage. It's very similar that way. Couple months ago, I was working with a woman who's very positive, very upbeat, very outgoing, and she said to me after, she's like, I forget how much better I feel. It wasn't that I was feeling bad, but I'm just feeling that much better.
Right.
So yeah, you don't need to be in a deep, dark place to feel that emotion code to benefit you. So.
And then there just could be things also because children can't really, if they're 2, they can't tell you that there's things going on and you're probably not catching it. So this could be even a good place to see if there's a change in their behavior. So if they're having trouble with their sleep or toiletings, kind of just like what's going on. Because, like children will regress, right? Like when their emotions are like overwhelming them, they start to have behavior that is like not
Yes.
typical for them or shouldn't be part of like the way that they're supposed to be growing up. So like that, I could see that being like a huge positive to take a child in and then see if there's a difference. Then it's like, okay, that was likely an emotion, like a behavior attached to an emotion.
Yeah, because even like Ginette said, it's not like, it's how they perceived that situation, right? At that time. So like, to me, it's like you fell off a chair, but maybe to that was something, or like whatever it is, right?
It could have been terrifying.
Yes, exactly.
Or, you know, the dog came near them and they perceived it as a really like scary thing, but you just saw a dog go near your kid.
Yeah.
And that's where you just don't know. And even in very young kids, you can see big, scary emotions like unworthy or worthlessness. And I always tell parents, please don't take those big emotions to heart. They're not identifying with those emotions, but they're underlying.
Right.
And we just don't know how kids are perceiving things. I think it's easy to see, you know, I can say with my own kids, one will often say like, oh, well, they were mean. And it's like, well, what was mean? And it's like, well, so-and-so didn't want to play with me. And then when you dig into the story, it's like, well, so-and-so was just playing with someone else. It wasn't that they didn't want to play with you. They were playing with someone else.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to be like, oh, well, they didn't want to play with me in a kid's eyes.
So with an emotion like unworthy, because that to me, that's a deep one that like we don't often say like, I feel so unworthy right now. That's one that like you're like you did, you reminded me of a time. And then I like, totally unworthy. And to me, both the unworthy times were like almost that unworthy where you're so hard on yourself that you feel unworthy, but you're not. You're just making yourself feel that way in that situation. For a child, when you're doing this and say, you know, you come across unworthy for them and they're 2 or 3, they don't attach the same meaning like I do.
No.
So like when I think of unworthy, I have my definition and like the things that happen that I think about that would be like, oh, that made me feel unworthy. But a child wouldn't. So does this kind of show the way that like emotion is what it is? Like, I hate to say that, but like the emotion of unworthiness, like it is what it is. It is that emotion. And then a child feels it. They just don't have a definition for it.
Yeah.
Is that
Very
right?
much so.
Like, okay.
Yeah. And even as adults, we often don't have definitions.
Right.
Like with that example of anger, where afterwards we're like, actually, I was really disappointed, or I was really sad.
Or confused, or whatever it
or
was.
confused. And that's where, you know, we're not taught as kids, very rarely anyways, we're not taught to label our emotions.
Other than the surface emotions, I guess.
And even those we're not really taught. Those we just kind of, sometimes we are, but often we just sort of learn them as we go. And that's where, you know, what a beautiful world it would be if as children we were taught to label our emotions.
Right.
Because in that act of labeling, it helps us to connect and identify and release and work through things more effectively.
Right.
So
I don't know if you have the answer to this, but how would you recommend to parents how to help their,
like, teach that?
Teach them to recommend, or you know what I mean. I can't talk today.
I get like the first thing that comes to my mind is like, you know how they say to narrate, like for a baby, for instance, like the whole day you're just narrating. So I almost feel like if as an adult you start feeling an emotion, if you started like narrating that emotion to like the child, and then over time they would just catch on to that too.
I think even being honest, which can be hard as a parent, if we're going through stuff, we often just want to hide it because we don't want our kids to see it. And there's times when that's necessary, but there's times where it's like we can be honest and our kids can see us cry and be like, you know, mom's just really sad right now, or mom's really disappointed, or whatever it might be. And then even with kids, you know, for asking how, one of the things, because I'm not a counselor, is I love to read on that stuff. There's, you know, it's called social emotional learning or emotional intelligence. And I love reading about that because it just intrigues me. And I think it's so important. So even sitting down with your kid and being, you know, if you see that they're angry, okay, I see that you're angry right now. Do you think there's anything behind your anger?
Mm.
What else do you think you might be feeling?
Right. Rather than the usual, like, okay, calm down. Like that's enough. You don't need to be so
or
angry.
you're fine.
Or you're fine.
Yeah, you're fine. Or, it's a harsh one, but I'll give you something to be angry about, or those sort of comments, right?
Yeah.
My go-to line.
or that's not something worth crying over. That's not something worth getting angry about.
Right.
Instead of just helping them to figure out what they're really feeling instead of discrediting it. I can't say that apparently.
I do find, like, with Abby, I've been trying to describe her emotions that she might be feeling, but it's just like she's 2. I'm like, because if she's crying, I'm like, oh, you're sad, but then I'm like, well, maybe you're frustrated, like trying to give her different emotions, but it's hard to, like,
and give her options.
Yeah, but then so now I'm trying to even, like, mom's feeling frustrated, like, or I'm feeling sad, like I'm trying to tell her my emotions too, so that she can just even, like, learn, like, almost like what's on someone else. So I noticed, like, at the park, she's like, someone's crying, she's like, she's sad, and like she's only 2.
Aww.
So I'm like, yeah, she's sad. Or she'll see, like, it on a show, oh, crying, she's sad, like, yay.
Yeah.
You know that, like, so, like,
That's
those small
awesome.
little connections, but it takes a lot, and, like, even just to remember to do those things in the moment when you are feeling frustrated as well or something, right? So
and then being gentle with yourself. No one's ever going to be the perfect mom and say the right thing and handle every situation perfectly. For me, books are great. Kids' books on emotions, parenting books on emotions, all that stuff just adds to our toolboxes as parents. Because it's not like you're sent home from the hospital with, like, okay, here's all this, anything other than this child.
A free diaper, and a couple wipes.
And some really snazzy underwear.
Yeah.
Some nipple cream, maybe.
I don't know. You might be lucky to get the nipple cream.
But you ain't getting that without.
Dang. I know. I heard they have some good stuff. You need a prescription though.
Yeah.
There you go. But it's books. Like I'm a book reader, so that's kind of. There isn't a handbook. There isn't a perfect book. Oh my goodness. Sorry, I'm really struggling today.
It's okay.
There isn't a perfect book out there. So I just like to read different ones, and I find I get a tidbit or two from every one.
Right.
And then that's the tidbits I like to share. Like I'm reading a book on, I think it's called The Opposite of Anxiety right now. And it's written by an adult. It's for adults. And he grew up, he's a psychologist and grew up with high levels of anxiety. And he shares stuff that works. And it's like, I'm only halfway through, but I've got a few new little tidbits about, instead of trying to rationalize with a child, you could try getting down and being like, hey, I see you're really scared right now. Do you see fear in mommy's eyes? Because if we're fearful and they're fearful, it's just we're gonna amp each other up. Where if we can be calm and be like, do you see that mommy's calm? It's like, oh yeah, mom is calm.
Right.
Maybe I can be okay. And then get them to a point where they can then talk about what maybe got them scared. But if you are scared too generally, then that's okay. Then you can learn to work through it together, because sometimes both people are going to be scared.
Yeah. I guess with like even Abby seeing someone crying and saying, oh, she's sad, that makes me laugh a little, because I cry when I'm happy, like a lot.
Yeah.
And that's confusing, because I've done that and I've had like a kid around me being like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm just really happy. So I'm crying. And then it makes other people cry, but then they're crying because they're like,
it's like weddings.
Empathizing with you.
It's just like weddings.
Yes, exactly. Like weddings. Like you see bride walk down the aisle and you're just like sobbing.
Yeah.
And it's not that you're like, oh, she's walking to her misery. Like, you know what I mean? It's like,
it's happy tears.
It's happy tears, but it's so hard to explain, because with like 5 different emotions, crying is like one of those stronger like things that we do. So when I'm really sad, I'm crying. When I'm really happy, I'm crying. When I get frustrated, I tend to cry. Like, you know, when I'm confused, I cry sometimes. So like when I'm overwhelmed, I cry. And those are such different emotions, but I'm doing the same thing every time. So
you're doing the same action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like, geez, I kind of feel bad for my kids just gonna see me cry all the time and be like, I don't know what mom's feeling, but she's crying again.
Sure, she's happy or she's sad.
She's crying again. Go in the other room.
I think that Pixar, I can't remember the name of it, that Pixar movie about the emotions.
I know which one. I can't think of it either.
Yeah. That one really explains like how the difference
Is
of
it
like
inside,
children.
inside out?
Yes,
Inside Out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like how a child's brain, like it only has like those 5 core emotions, and then like afterwards they start mixing together. So like they can be happy and sad at the same time.
Yes.
They can like, I really like that movie for like explaining it to kids, how like the changes as they get older, they can formulate them emotions together instead of just feeling that one feeling at a time.
And that's where, you know, when I said in a full session, there's probably more around that big move from when you were 8, Allie, because we can feel a multitude of emotions at the same time throughout an event.
Oh yeah. I think lack of control like really encompasses it well. Like that being the one that came up first for that incident is like total, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I could definitely try and guess the other ones now that I was reminded. I could write a book about that incident for sure. But I find like, so with, speaking of books, emotional intelligence, I love understanding as well. I think it's really important. Often like people, and I've read about this, so like people who understand emotional intelligence have healthier relationships too, like within their home.
Yes.
Because they're better able to identify like what their partner or what their children are feeling, and then there's just less stress within the family. But do you have a favorite book? Because then I'd love to share it.
Oh,
I'd love to read it also.
Right now.
I tend to go with the ones I've read more recently. I've really been trying to read more male authors about emotions because I do like sharing books with clients, and I've been working with more males recently. And, you know, I love Brene Brown. If anyone's familiar listening, Brene Brown is fantastic in talking about emotions, talking about the stories we tell ourselves. Love recommending her stuff. But a male may not identify the same.
Totally.
Might, maybe not. I don't know. So I've been trying to find more male authors. So one I read recently is Permission to Feel. I can't think of the author at the moment. And then I'm quite enjoying the one I'm reading right now. I think it's called The Opposite of Anxiety, and both are male authors. And the Permission to Feel one is really neat because it talks a lot about social emotional learning. It actually has a chart of emotions, which I have a chart of emotions. So that one was like, ooh, neat.
It's right up your alley.
It is right up my alley. But it used it in such a way. It talked about, you know, learning how to identify your emotions, and it kind of breaks it down too. So there's like the high energy emotions, like the anger, but on the opposite, there's a high energy of like excitement. So those are both on the high end, but opposite ends. So it kind of breaks it down to quadrants of what you're feeling. And then within that quadrant, it walks you through how to use it to like pinpoint what you might be feeling, and just increases that emotional vocabulary, which is that emotional intelligence. And then talks a lot about, you know, giving yourself permission to feel. And just interesting again, because that male author, so often, you know, for lots of people, not just males, we're told, well, you know, our emotions are discredited when we're kids, or like, oh, you know, you can't feel that, don't feel that. Or often even, you know, oh, don't cry, boys don't cry. All those sort of stories we're told as a kid. So we're like, okay, well, I can't feel my feelings, but I'm feeling them. And then learning to identify them helps us to feel them in a safe, learn to be okay feeling them.
I know. So, yeah. Like, I guess a lot of men probably have to almost like come to terms with like, okay, I'm allowed to feel this. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's hard to talk about because as a woman, we're so like emotionally driven. So
They
like,
were allowed to be.
yeah, well,
It's more
right? Like
acceptable, but there are
Yeah.
a lot of women who aren't comfortable
Yeah.
showing their
Sarah,
emotions or sharing their emotions.
Sarah.
So there's both, there's all gamuts of it out there.
Yeah,
And that's
it's
where,
for
like,
sure.
I want to say, you shared what came up for you, but there's no need to.
Right.
Yeah.
I
I
wanted
have
to
many a
just so that it
person.
wasn't like like, okay, she has a memory, because it's kind of, to me, I also kind of want to show like what you're doing is actually triggering something. I mean, I kept it vague, but like I could have definitely gone into it for
Yeah.
sure. But I just kind of wanted to also like there's truth to it, like, because if I almost felt like if I just had like a response, like say I started crying, it's almost like, would someone listening buy into that? Because it's like, okay, Allie's just an emotional person, so she's just crying all the time. So like she could just trigger her crying, where to me it's like, I'm even sitting here thinking like the unworthy one has really got me. I am like thinking so much because there's just two moments in that year that I'm now like undoing while we're sitting here. Like I am like
Yeah.
thinking about them, and not in a bad way, but I'm just like giving them attention because like I did it.
Yes. And that's so key. It is about giving them attention, because
Yeah.
if you think of emotions can be kind of connected to a toddler. Sometimes you just need to go to your toddler and be like, yeah, I see you. And then they're good. But before that, they're like,
Right.
mom.
Right.
And that's what our emotions are kind of doing in the background.
Yes.
And then you shine the light on them and they're like, oh, okay. Then they're
Yeah,
off and they're good.
good.
They just
And
need that.
That's how I feel right now. I feel almost like rejuvenated, like weirdly, because it's like,
Yeah.
okay, they have this attention. They're almost like their own little like being, like the memory is just kind of its own little person. And it's like, you forgot about me, or you like really pushed me in there and you didn't talk about me. Like that's kind of just how I'm feeling right now. Like now I just want to go talk about it. Now I just need someone to listen to me talk about it.
That's a whole other podcast.
Yeah. Tune in next week where I talk about.
So yeah, and that's where everyone's really different.
Yeah.
The level, I've said it a few times, I'm not a counselor, but I do listen. And I think that's important, because unfortunately not everyone has someone they can talk to. And I take confidentiality extremely seriously.
Yeah.
And it's, if it goes in my ears in a session, that's where it ends. It doesn't go. And so many people don't feel like they've got a safe person, especially in a small town, that they could let their honest truth out without hearing it come back to them in a roundabout way. And that's, it's unfortunate, but that's the case for some people. So sometimes just listening is so much value as well.
Yeah. And I mean, to compare it, none of the ones that came up for me are like, I guess I wouldn't be ashamed for people to hear about them. So I don't mind sharing them, because they're just, there are things that were hard for me, but they are also things that taught me a lot. And I learned and I grew, and like I would not be who I am if I didn't go through those things. And so I understand that. But I could see how if someone had like, really heavy trauma, and things came up for them, like that would be frightening too, because it's like, okay, these things are going to come up, and do I want them out there? Am I safe? And so to have that confidentiality too, and it, like, you're right, because even if you have like your spouse, there's things you probably don't want to tell them either. Like, it's not always things that you want to share.
And sometimes there's things about our spouse that we need to let go of.
Yeah.
Or maybe things from past relationships that we realize are getting triggered in our current relationship, that we pull along our baggage with us, and it impacts our current relationships too.
Yeah.
So
I honestly love this. I feel so good.
Good.
I feel so much better watching it.
Now
even
you're
though
curious.
I know, like, Ginette's like, there's not really anything to watch, but I did feel like there really was.
Yeah.
So, like, I feel better about going to a session. I don't know why. Like, it was just so, if you're unsure, watch the session. Don't just listen. Watch.
Turn it on. Watch me cry. Watch me ugly cry.
It just felt good, like that. almost felt the energy too, like between
Mhm.
you, or saw it or something. So it was
Yeah.
very cool.
And
Very
cool.
cool.
I for sure felt it.
Thank you.
So
Good.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And that too
Amazing.
is different. Some people don't necessarily, everyone's so different. Some people feel it in the session and some people feel it later.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's
I
no
felt
wrong
it
or right with that either.
especially like after the breaths, and then when I would like open my eyes again, I would feel like instant, almost like just lighter. Like I almost
Yeah.
felt like I was in different air.
Lighter,
just
that is
different air.
probably
Yeah.
one of the most common words that people use when they're describing how they feel after is lighter.
Wow.
It felt different. Like the air around me felt different, like touching my skin. Like I almost just felt like, I don't know, like clammy. Like I could just feel
Okay.
the air
Yeah.
better on my skin. Like it was just sticking
Yeah.
to me.
Mhm.
It's a really weird feeling, but I loved it.
Nice. Good.
But yeah, that was
Good.
amazing. I think maybe
Good.
let's end with, if you could remind everyone how they could get a hold of
Get in
you or see your
contact.
stuff,
Yeah.
contact you,
Okay.
if you have any web pages and Facebook and things like that.
Not a web page yet. I'm not a huge advertising savvy person, unfortunately. It's on my one day list.
Yeah.
But I do work out of Edson Family Chiropractic on the highway there. So you can contact them to book an in-person session at 780-723-1985. Or you can reach me through email, which I'll just probably put in the comments is probably easiest, but it's just my first and last name at Outlook. So Ginette_Martin at Outlook, or through Facebook or Instagram at Edson Eternal Balance.
Perfect.
Are other ways to, find a bit of information, I'll post some videos like this. Eventually I'm really slack at that too. But other ways to reach out. So
yeah. Perfect.
And if you didn't get to watch the first episode with Ginette on, go watch that one first too, would be or I guess now.
Watch it now.
Watch it now. You're watching this one already.
So, and even if you have, if you don't want to book a session, but you want to ask more questions or ask, hey, would this work with my child? Or could you work on this? It's, I'm always open to questions, and I've never once and never will say, yes, for sure, I guarantee that's going to work on that, because you just never know. But I will always give 110%, and you just never know.
I honestly feel like the stories that I have heard, and like your stories, and even like the people that came to see Sarah, and everyone talking about it, these are the kinds of services that I find everyone doubts the most and they end up helping the most.
Yes.
Like you're like afraid to give yourself to it almost, I think. And that's like the drawback, but like trust me when I say I feel lighter. And just like try it. I'm sold. I'm sold. I'm in.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah,
Thank you
that's
so
the
much.
thing. You just never know. You never know what'll do what. But we are made of energy, and our emotions are energy. So moving them energetically, just when you really think about it, makes sense.
It makes total sense.
So
thank you
it's
so
just
much.
not what we're used to yet. Thank you guys. Thank you.
I gotta go like talk about this.
I'll be getting a phone call in 5 minutes.
I gotta call my mom. I gotta call Sarah.
And that's the thing too, with doing it over the phone, if your family is still back east and your mom wants to give it a try, I can work with her. It doesn't matter where someone is. I've got clients all over the world.
Amazing. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Ginette. Thanks for pushing me out of my comfort zone and having me do a recording and a video twice now.
You're very welcome.
You're welcome. We hope you enjoyed it.
Yes,
I did. It's not my zone, but it's just something I'm so passionate about that it's easy to talk about. So thank you for giving me the chance to share what I love and what I know helps so many people.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
We'll chat later.
Bye.
Bye.